Hello and welcome to the Property Legacy Podcast. This is our first episode, so welcome. It's lovely to meet you all. My name is Alice Potter and I'm with my dad, Steve Potter. We are your hosts and we are very, very excited to tell you all about our podcast and to kick off our first official episode. So, Dad, do you want to tell them a little bit more about what we're doing and why we're here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Steve Potter. I'm a property investor based in Blackpool. Alice is working for me doing social media and marketing. So we decided to set up a podcast so that we can get information out to as many people as possible about becoming a property investor.
We're really, really excited for this podcast. It's been something that myself and Steve have been talking about for a number of years. We've both wanted to start a podcast, but we didn't actually know what we wanted to do it about. And I came to him a few months ago and we started working together, and I said, look, I can bring all of the design aspect and the fun and the content creation to your business, but I don't really know much about property. So it's something that I need to learn about, and I feel like a lot of people would do well in learning about it as well. So it's going to be a bit of a journey. We're all here together, we're all learning as we go, but we are here to educate. Hopefully people will take stuff away from the episodes, and we're here to create a platform for ourselves and the work that we do.
Personally, I feel that everybody can work in the property market, whether you have money to buy property or not, and you can get yourself from having zero money and zero property to a millionaire status within quite a short time just by putting some effort in. Alice doesn't know much about property, so this is a case of teaching.
I know nothing about property. I feel like as somebody in their 20s, I should know a lot more about property. The majority of people my age, they just don't know what they need to know about buying property, about property investment, about how to manage their money. I really feel like it's something that there needs to be more education around, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, well, ultimately the education in the UK and around the world don't actually tell you how to manage money, how to make money or invest. The education system is basically churning out people to be a good employee. But to be an entrepreneur or to be a business owner, to be an investor, you need to learn that you can make mistakes. You need to make mistakes to learn from it. Whereas at school, if you made mistakes, you didn't get the questions right, you were at the back of the class, or you were put into special education when I was in school, which is quite a while ago. You basically turned into somebody that has to get all the questions right 100% of the time, every time, first time. And when you're working for an employer, if you don't get things right, you get sacked. You have to work hard, work long hours, make lots of money, be a good employee, and if you're not, you lose everything. But that's a lot of crap, because if you're working for yourself, you make mistakes and you learn and build for a better future. And you can make a better future for your family and your friends and everybody around you. You can use investing to help support one person in a couple if they're going to stop working because they're having children. Then they can do that and replace that wage they've lost by investing in property and having a nice flow of income. You don't have to be working the 9 to 5, and you can become financially free eventually. That's my goal. Well on my way towards doing that. I retired this year, so I'm officially not an employee at all anymore. But that's only after 4 years of being a property investor.
Steve has been in this business for 4 years now, and he's managed to achieve so much, and that's coming from investing very little money into it. It's a good testament to people as well. You don't have to be a certain age to achieve these things. It isn't kind of everything's over by, I feel like in my 20s, everyone says everything's over by your 30s, and then it's everything's over by your 40s. You've got to achieve this by your 50s. Age doesn't come with limits, and I really feel like you can achieve anything and you can start a new career and a new passion at any time, and we are living proof of that.
If I can teach Alice, my daughter, and it becomes then a legacy And that's why we call it the property legacy, so that the business and everything is handed down to the children, and they can then teach their own children and grandchildren and everybody else. So that's the whole emphasis behind it.
That is why we are here, and we have created Property Legacy to enjoy the experience with all of you.
So don't forget, this is our first podcast. We're beginners at this podcasting stuff, so we can only get better. Exactly. I'm sorry. It's just one of those things.
And also, it's not going to be super serious around here. It never is.
No.
If any of you already follow us on PPS Property, you'll see the bloopers in our videos. They come through thick and fast. We have a fun time working together, which is nice. It's a nice thing to say, working with family. Sometimes people don't get on. But we have lots of fun when we're getting behind a camera and forcing ourselves out of our comfort zones.
Definitely outside our comfort zones.
Yes. So being your daughter comes with a lot of panic. Steve wakes up at 5 o'clock every morning to do admin, and sometimes I wake up with 7 messages from him of all different things to look at and all different things to do. And you're a man of many ideas, which I love. I think that's where I get it from, which I appreciate. He wants everything to happen today.
Oh yeah, I've got no patience.
No, everything needs to happen today. Like the podcast needed to happen yesterday. So we're here, and that's what we're doing. He told me a few weeks ago that he was going to write a book. Within a week, he'd written 3 books, and now it's turned into a series of 16 books. Well,
what are you supposed to do at Christmas? Can't do anything else.
That's very true. I just ate chocolate and slept, and played some Lego with my daughter, but that was about it. So you've been working on a book series, and the series is actually going to structure some of our podcast episodes. It gives us really good talking points and a starting point of what we're going to be talking about today. So we are here with our first podcast episode, and it is titled Understanding Buy to Let, which is something that I feel a lot of people will benefit from listening to. And I'll be honest, I really don't know much about it, so I'm interested to have your insight on it. So what is buy to let?
Buy to let is one of the most used form of buying a property and then renting it out. That's basically what buy to let is. Years ago, my parents started buying when they retired, and they bought property and they managed it themselves, and they made some money, which is really good. But nowadays, over the last few years, the government in the UK especially has reduced the amount that you can claim back against taxes, and it's become very unmanageable if you're owning the property in your own name, and if you are managing it yourself, you get taxed a great deal.
No one likes to be taxed.
No, nobody likes that. So the whole point is that what I do is I invest my buy-to-let properties into a limited company, and then the tax arrangements with a limited company is different. If you get a mortgage, it's the company that gets the mortgage, not me. So the company could actually be worth a lot more than me. It's a total separate entity.
Okay.
Buy-to-let itself is very, very straightforward. You literally buy a property and then you rent it out to somebody and they give you money for that.
Is there any laws against doing that? Is it something that people doing, or is it?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of people that think that landlords just want to make as much money as possible out of their tenants, and they don't want to do the properties up. And there's always bad tenants, bad landlords. There's been TV programs about bad landlords.
Yeah.
There's been TV programs about people who don't look after the properties. These are all things that could happen in property investing, but we always look at having a win-win scenario. So majority of the time, landlords feel that they are the most important and the tenant is just something that they have to put up with, which is never a good idea. So we talk to our landlords and we talk to our tenants, and the tenant and the landlord are equal, because without a tenant, you don't have a landlord, and without a landlord, you don't have a tenant. Mm-hmm. If a tenant doesn't look after your property, the landlord's going to suffer. If a landlord doesn't look after property, the tenant's going to suffer. And eventually, you're going to have this give and take, win-win for both sides of the equation. Now, whether I'm the landlord or whether it's a landlord and we manage the property for them, It's all needs to be put into the same frame of mind so that everybody's intentions are looked after and everybody's property and everybody's money is looked after in the best way. And there's loads of regulations. There's actually over 150 regulations you have to abide by before you can actually rent your property out.
Right.
So people who self-manage still have to abide by all these rules.
Okay.
So that's why people use letting agents, because they are qualified and they have done courses and they have a lot of regulations to abide by because they're looking after somebody else's house, but there is a cost to it. But in my opinion, and the people that I've done education with, is a landlord's ideal scenario is that they hand the property over, put a tenant in it, and then they don't need to deal with it. They don't have to bother with it. And it's hands-free investing. So if you have somebody managing a property, they deal with the tenant, they deal with the contractors, they deal with anything that needs doing. There's so many regulations and laws out there that one will put you off, two will catch you out, and three, you could even end up in prison. So there's £5,000 to £30,000 of fines available out there to be caught up in. And if you kill somebody or somebody dies in your property or there's a problem that to that extent, then you could end up in prison.
Goodness me.
So it's something that if you're into property and you're doing this as a career, then you really need to have good education. You really need to know your stuff and keep up to date with the regulations.
Okay, well, we've got a long way to go for me, but we'll see. We'll see how we get on.
Essentially, it's very straightforward. You buy a property, you make sure it's nice, and then you rent it out.
And everybody is allowed to do that?
Yes.
Fantastic. So the main question of this episode is buy-to-let dead? There's been a lot of stuff in the media and in the press, and what is the current scenario with buy-to-let? Is it something that we recommend people getting involved in? Is it something that we would recommend them moving away from? What are the advantages and disadvantages of buy-to-let, and is it still a thriving business opportunity?
Okay, so in my opinion, buy-to-lets are still a valid opportunity for investment as long as you structure it around a company, because that gives you, first of all, you don't pay as much tax, and you only pay tax on the profits you make, not on all the income you make. So there's two different ways. If you an employee, you get taxed before you get your money. If you own a company, the money gets taxed at the end of the year if there's any profit.
Okay.
So by having it in a company structure, it's going to be better to manage and easier to go forward. If you listen to the media in the UK in 2023, halfway through the year in June, July, they were saying there's a big crash in property and real estate. There'll be thousands and thousands wiped off property prices, and it's all doom and gloom. And everybody was going, oh, woe is me, and interest rates were going up, and inflation was flying through the roof at 10%. But we survived it. We're still here. It's now January 2024. Interest rates are now coming back down. Inflation's coming back down. And it was just a kerfuffle over nothing. We are in a recession. But from a property investment scenario, a recession is a great time to buy property. Not a good time to sell properties, but some people have to. So we can take advantage of that and buy property when the price is on the way down, because we know that on average prices recover and prices increase and double every 8.1 years.
Okay.
All the house prices, average house prices for the UK gets reported on a monthly basis.
Okay.
And it also gets reported on what areas are increasing, what areas are decreasing, what areas are staying the same. So last year when media was all kicking off and going nuts over thousands and thousands of pounds being knocked off people's houses, they were talking about London. In the UK, everybody talks about London. Everywhere else doesn't exist.
That is the standard, though, I think, especially, well, being someone from the UK, when you go on holiday and you tell people from the UK, they only know London or Manchester. We tell them that we're from Blackpool and they go, oh, is that near Manchester? You have to say, yeah, it's near Manchester.
Yeah.
And there's such a massive difference between London and London prices to us in the northwest here. It's a completely different way of life, a different way of living, and the money side of things is just worlds apart in general.
Yeah. So at this moment in time in January 2024, the northwest of the UK is in a decline on house prices by 1.5%. So what that means is if you have a £100,000 house, at this moment in time, it's now worth 98,500. So yes, you've lost some money, but obviously if you're in London where 1 or 2% can be 60,000 or 100,000 or 300,000, depending on, because you're buying houses of £1 million and more. So it depends on what area of the country you're looking at. But buy-to-lets is still a good, valid option, because when you look at what money you put in and then the return each year you get, you're going to always outperform banks. In the Blackpool area especially, we're averaging around 20-25% per annum increase in return, which you'll never get in a bank. You'll struggle to get in gold, you'll struggle to get on the stock market, and this is year in, year out. It's just a nice, easy way to invest. And the reason why we know that prices will increase again is, since 1952, when they started looking at the average house price in the UK, they've progressively increased over time from £1,000 or £2,000 was the average house price back then, to now it being £300,000-400,000 as the average house price in the UK. Now, that is not where we live in Blackpool. Our average house price is about 150 for a 3-bedroom house, if it's in a nice area and done up nicely. But lower end of the market, we can get from 70,000 up to about 180. So it's a lot easier to get into property investing in the Northwest. And that's why we're trying to do this, trying to let people know that there isn't just the area they live in. There are areas in the country where we can do this and make decent money.
Exactly, and that's why we have PPS, which does all of that. We can find investors, we can get them to invest in property in this area, because there's so much work that needs to be done in our area. There are so many empty properties, it's insane, and so many people that need somewhere to live. Every time we get a property, it's snapped up. We have over 100 people requesting to come and see it. There's so much interest. There's constant people posts I'm seeing on social media, people looking for private landlords, looking to rent straight away. They've been evicted for whatever reason. They can't stay any longer. Their landlords are putting the house on the market. It happens all the time, and there's just not enough houses to go around, it seems. So what we do as a company is we provide property management services, and we take care of everything. We find people tenants, we look after the maintenance of the property, we deal with all the payments, and then we just take a percentage of the rent every month. And it's something that works fantastically for us. It's something that works great for the landlords that we work with and the investors. And as we've said, there's just so much to go around. So in terms of buy-to-let, how do you identify like a target market? How do you figure out exactly where you're going to buy?
Majority of the time, if you look up on Google, they talk about the demographics and they talk about an area in the country that needs rented properties. They look for an area that's got employment, so you've got people coming into the area to work and need somewhere to live, or you look for building sites for new estates, or building sites for new hospitals, and all these kind of things will help you decide where is a good area to start looking at housing. And if you start to build and invest in an area, then you can take the punt that the area, the prices will increase because they're investing in the area. So for instance, Blackpool is having a £300 million investment into the area with new office blocks. So they're bringing in DWP and government offices into the Blackpool centre itself. Preston, which is just down the road, is a city that's having £1 billion of investment into it. The university there is having £200 million invested into it for making it bigger, getting more housing for students. So all this kind of information you need to research. For us, the Blackpool area is quite a controlled area. Half of the area is underwater because it's the seaside. So we get a lot of people coming here because they came with their parents when they were little, and they've had nice holidays, and they think that it's a good area to live, to bring up their children. And unfortunately, it's not always the case that there's employment to support that. But since COVID, and the fact that we now have a lot of home working opportunities, you don't have to be in the office. You don't have to be in Manchester or Liverpool or London. You can be here in Blackpool where the prices are cheap, and then commute to the office once or twice a week. And that type of thing is now making it more enticable for people to live further away from cities. So just to recap, you need to look at areas that have got employment, areas where people want to live, schools in the area, all the things you would look at if you were looking for a house to live in and you were going to buy yourself. But you look at it for areas of where people want to live, see that to let boards are going up and down on a regular basis. So you look at all these demographics and you make a decision of what the area is like, what kind of returns on rent you're going to achieve. So at this moment, the average, I was saying, for a 3-bedroom house in the Blackpool area is about £800 a month. So that means it's going to be 9,600 a year. Obviously taking costs into account and how much money you need to invest in the property. Obviously, you don't need to buy the property out with all your own money. You need to put down at least 25% for a deposit. So you can buy houses here for £25,000 investment and get basically over a quarter of that back every single year.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So from our point of view, that's why we invest in the Blackpool area, because one, we know it. I've lived here since I was 13, which is unfortunately nearly 40 years ago now.
And I've lived here my whole life. I was born here.
Yeah, so we understand the area. We understand the negatives of the run-down areas, and we understand the benefits of those areas as well. We also understand the benefits of the expensive areas, but there's a lot of negatives when you come to investing in expensive areas, and we'll go into that in a little bit of time.
So in terms of buy-to-let, if it was something that I was interested in doing, what is the actual process and timeframes in how you manage that?
Okay, so first of all, you need to have a budget. So you need to understand how much money you have to put down as a deposit. You need to understand whether you can get a mortgage and all these kind of things you need to take into account. So first of all, you need to look at how much you can afford to buy, then what areas that can be in. One thing you have to remember, if you're buying a property as an investment property, you are not going to live there. So you're not looking for something that you fall in love with. You're not looking for something you have an emotional tie to. It's a business decision. So you don't want emotions in there.
Okay.
Because say you have this house, you spent loads of time handcrafting all the decorating and making sure it's perfect, and then it gets trashed. You're going to feel terrible. You're going to feel devastated about it. You've got insurance and you can get it done up again, but really you lose that kind of passion with it. But if you understand that this is a business transaction, you're going to supply a good quality house in good state. It's a win-win scenario for the tenant as well. You wouldn't want to hand over a house that wouldn't allow yourself or your children to live in. So the area might not be where you'd want to live, the location might not be where you want to live, but you want to have a standard that you're happy with, so that one, you don't get complaints, and two, it's easier to sleep at night if you know that people are in a safe, comfortable house that you were providing.
Of course.
So with all this in mind, you then look at Rightmove or Zoopla or all the other avenues to look at.
Other websites are available.
Other websites are available, but Rightmove is really good. So you look there, you can set your search for your area, set your search for the number of bedrooms, you can set in the price that you want to look for, and you can also have an idea of whether you want to buy a property that's already done up or whether you want to buy a property that is run down and then you can do up. But obviously you need to factor in the cost of that. We always say that you need to look for a property you can add value to. You would look for a 2-bedroom house that you can add a bedroom, or you could extend out the back into a 3 or 4-bedroom house. So you go from something that's cost 60,000 and make it into something that's worth 130,000 as cheaply as you can, but you can then almost multiply the amount of money you're gaining out of this. It increases the amount of rent you can charge, it increases the amount of resale value. So whenever you're looking on these Rightmove and other websites, you look at the floor plan first. I always look at the floor plan. I don't really look at the outside.
I like going on a floor plan. I enjoy them. They're one of my favourite things about looking at houses.
So it tells you a lot about the house. It tells you the space you've got, whether you've got just one living room, whether you've got two living rooms, whether you've got conservatory, all these kind of things will add into it. But from our point of view, from an investment point of view, if you have a property that has two lounges or a lounge and a dining room and then a kitchen, then you can turn one of those rooms into a third or a fourth bedroom. It's already a room, all the electrics are there, all you have to do is redecorate it. You don't need to do planning permission, but you can then instantly have a 3-bedroom from a 2-bedroom or a 4-bedroom and make more money.
Okay.
So these are all things you look at, and then you go and view properties. So you have a big long list, and then you whittle them down to 2 or 3 properties you can go and look. You then make a decision whether you like the property and want to put an offer in, and you put an offer in of what you want to pay. No matter what the asking price is, no matter whether it says asking over this or whatever, in the UK, you can put whatever offer in. In Scotland, you have to put in the asking price or above.
I didn't know that you could put in any amount of money.
Yeah, they don't have to accept it, but you can literally say, well, actually, it's going to cost me £20,000 to do this £100,000 house up. I'm going to offer 80,000.
Right. Okay.
So there's a ways to approach it, and there are lots of investors that will go really low as silly offers, just in case the people who are trying to sell it need to sell quickly, and you can then make more money out of it. Obviously.
Exactly, because people snap things up sometimes. It's worth asking,
Even
if you were being a little bit cheeky, but you never know. You could get that one biter on a hook.
This is it. So these are all things to take into account. Obviously, you need to do your numbers. So you need to understand the cost of the property, how much your solicitor costs will cost, or your legal costs, how much it's going to cost you to get a mortgage, because there are costs to getting a mortgage. You got survey costs and other things in there. You need to understand the interest rates on your mortgage so that you can work out whether it's going to make you money. So we always say that we look for a property that has a gross yield, initial yield of over 7%. Now, the way we work that out is it's the value of the house, or the asking price, and the rental yield you will be able to achieve on this property. So say it's 10,000, just for ease of calculations, and it's a £100,000 house, then you are earning a yield of 10% every year. So it's 10,000 divided by 100,000 times by 100 gives you a percentage of 10%.
Okay.
And that's how you work out your yield. Now in London, people are happy with 3% yields because they have to put a lot more money in. They're buying £1 million properties.
Sure.
You have to put a lot more deposit. Whereas up here, we're putting smaller deposits in there. So it actually makes a better sense. You can buy, with £1 million, you can buy 10 properties up here. In London, you'd be lucky if you buy one. You need to understand calculations, and spreadsheets are ideal for this because you can just put things in and it immediately tells you what your yield's going to be. If you put 25% deposit down, what return on the investment's going to be and how much profit you will make and whether it's worth it. And that's something that you need to do with every single property you look at so that you know what to offer. And you just go down the process of looking at properties, making offers until you get your offer accepted.
And when the offer's accepted, what do we do then?
Then the real work starts. So we will then have to instruct a solicitor that will then do the process of buying the property on your behalf. You then have to go to a mortgage company to get them to offer you a mortgage based on your wages, or if you're buying through a limited company, as I suggested before, then it's more to do with the return you will get from the investment. A buy-to-let mortgage is more to do with the amount of rent you get in is going to be 2 to 3 times higher than the mortgage costs. And that means you get a decent amount of profit to cover any costs, any repairs and voids, all these kind of things that you can then put into your calculations.
Okay.
So you put all this in place, you get your mortgage, you get your solicitor working for you, and then you wait for weeks. It's terrible. In the UK at the moment, it's taking 12 weeks and upwards just to buy a house. And you'd think with technology that your solicitor has to do searches to make sure that they understand about the property in the area, but all this should be on a computer and be done within a few hours or a day. It takes 2 weeks to get the searches back. The solicitor then has to send a message to the other solicitor and get contracts set up, and then they argue over it for days and days and days. And it goes on and on and on and on. So you need to be patient. Very patient.
Yeah. Patience is something that I think in the process of buying a property, similar to you in the way that you work, you want everything yesterday or at least today. So patience is something I think that you've had to learn along the way, and it's a factor that people don't really think about. They think that things happen super quickly, and you will eventually get there in the end and reap the rewards from it.
So, and eventually you'll get to a point where your solicitor will says, okay, you sign your contracts and then you can exchange and complete. Now, what does this actually mean? Right, so you get a contract that you sign to say you're going to buy a house for X amount of money. They've agreed that they're going to leave the light fittings in, the doors, the windows, the carpets, all this kind of stuff has been agreed in this contract, which is why it's very long-winded. But then you go to a point where you go to exchange. So basically exchanges, you literally exchange a signed contract with this seller's solicitor. The buyers send it in and they make sure that everybody's happy with it, and you pay your deposit at that point. And then it can be on the same day, but sometimes a week later they go to completion. And effectively, once it's completed, which means the full amount of money has been handed over and everybody's happy with that and they agree that it's all been signed and sealed and delivered, then you get the keys.
And then the real work starts.
And then the real work starts. So it's then exciting, and you can have your picture in front of the front door with the key and all this kind of stuff that you see on TikTok and all the other socials all the time. And that's really the if it's your first one, it's a real big thing to do.
And that's why as well. That's why everybody posts them, because it is such a long process. And I think the process of buying a house, having that time, it's such a long time to wait. And when you finally get there, it is like a huge achievement. So whether you're doing it for yourself as a first-time buyer or whether you're doing it as your first property investment, it's a huge achievement by the time you get there.
Yeah, and it's there are a lot of people in the world that will never own a property. So it's a big achievement, something to be proud of. And it means it's another step towards making yourself financially free and secure, and your family then is going to be secure and all these kind of things. So it's a big thing to do. So, but it is a long process, and it's frustrating, and hopefully as technology improves, it'll get quicker and quicker and quicker, and perhaps you can buy a house within less than 2 months. That'd be good.
That would be ideal. Think how many houses we could buy.
Exactly. But the way if you were investing in property professionally, then you would have deal after deal after deal all lined up, and you would do 3 or 4 in a year, 5, 10 in a year, and you can just line them up so that you have one completing every week. Because then I wouldn't have any problems with patience.
And we'd be sat here, we'd have people actually on the other side of that camera, not us running over to check whether it's still rolling.
Yeah, one isn't.
Maybe one day we'll film our podcast episodes from the Caribbean.
Our own studio.
Our own studio. We'll see. So to finish off, is buy-to-let worth it? Is it dead? That's the main question.
Not dead. It's a really good strategy to work with. I personally use it for all our properties as a backup strategy, because there are other strategies we can earn more, but buy-to-lets are definitely not dead.
Fantastic. Well, Hopefully you've all learned something from our first episode. It's been a lot of fun. We've had a few technical difficulties, so I'm sure there'll be some bloopers for you too. In terms of a first episode, we've covered a lot of ground. We've given you guys just enough information for you to feel like you've taken something away from this, and you'll be back for the next one.
And it'd be great to hear from you guys what you think of the podcast, whether you like something, didn't like something. If you've got a question that you want us to answer, then please contact us through our socials and through the description below and comments, and we'll try and introduce these questions in each week.
You can find us on all of our social channels. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook and TikTok.
Thank you for listening and watching our Property Legacy podcast. I hope you enjoyed it.
If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify, then make sure to like. No! What's it doing?
The battery just died. Oh, shit.